thing I want to start off with about your decision-making process, make sure it's logical. You get laughed out of the room. Well, no kidding. Okay, let's see what happens when we crank up the stress.
Right, that's right. Yeah, put relationships
people
and people
are not making logical decisions.
You know when things get emotional? Whenever people are involved.
Yes.
Like that's it. Because that's just there's all those dynamics of those relationships and history and the way people talk and treat each other, and it creates, and then people become emotionally attached to their own plan. And so he has to put it in the book to codify it as you've got to be able to unemotionally detach and analyze what is the best decision that is going to have the biggest impact on the battlefield or to impact the battlefield.
Yeah. The character of the hostile leader and the hostile troops may be used in estimating the conduct of the enemy, especially if we have had previous battle experience with those. So you got to know who you're going against. That's a patent right there. I read your book. As a determined decision must be the logical result of careful consideration of all factors. The decisions made will not always correspond to the actual conditions presented. This is interesting. The decisions made will not always correspond to the actual conditions presented. Then the situation develops other than the decision contemplated. He has the greatest prospect of success who quickly and skillfully exploits other reconnaissance but does not change the decision except with compelling reasons. So that's the same thing we were talking about earlier. So you stick with your decision until you see that it's not a good decision, and then you change it.
The faster you can do that, you can quickly analyze it, right?
Yep.
That's how, like Boyd said with the OODA loop, the quicker you can go through that OODA loop, the better you can outmaneuver.
I used to do this all the time in Task Unit Bruiser. When things weren't going the way I expected them to go, my strongest desire was to keep doing what we planned to do. Like, okay, look, we didn't expect to take contact from over there, cool, but we're going to keep pressing through from the north or whatever. And that was where I leaned toward. I always lean toward go with the plan. You know, plan your dive your plan, right? Mm-hmm. We say on diving, hey, you come up with a plan, you go out there, everyone's walked through it, everyone knows what the plan is, we briefed it. If you can stick with that, you stick with it. But then sometimes you got to go, oh, you know what? I didn't expect that. And that is too big of a curveball for us to handle. I'm making an adjustment or making a call. And that's why we have standard operating procedures. And we make an adjustment based on something else that we've rehearsed 1,000 times.
That's right.
So you got to pay attention to that. Now we get into orders. This is pretty cool. The order puts the decision into effect. Clear orders are an essential for the frictionless cooperation of all commanders. For the higher commander, the written order provides the foundation for leadership. It is communicated to the lower units, printed as a carbon copy, typewritten or written by hand or by technical communications means. Frequently, it is dictated over the telephone. In every instance, the most sure and suitable method of transmission is to be chosen. Should the order be simple or short, it may be orally communicated. It must later, however, be committed to paper. So this is something that I talk about a lot, and I always throw out this question to trip everyone up. I say, what's better communication, email or voice? You know, email or conversation. Oh. And everyone goes, conversation. And they're right?
Yep.
Kind of. Because what goes on? What goes on is if I call you up and I say, hey, Andrew, we're going to do A, B, and C. You good with that? And you're like, cool, got it. And then you go out and what I said isn't what you heard. And you do A, B, and D.
That's right.
And I go, what's wrong with you? And you say, what? You told me to do A, B, and D. No, I told you to do A, B, and C. And here we go.
Right.
We have a problem. So that's why when you and I have a phone conversation, I say, we get done, and I call you, and I send you an email. It says, hey, just want to confirm we're on the same sheet. We're going to do A, B, and C. And you email me back and say, no, I thought you said you wanted me to do A, B, and D. No, sorry, I didn't articulate it right. We're definitely doing A, B, and C. And you say, okay, cool, got it. So verbal is great. Voice is great. Phone is great, yes. But email is very clear. Now you flip that over. Okay, now I'm just emailing you, hey, Andrew, do A, B, and C. And you're like, wait, why is he telling me this?
Right.
Is he telling me this because he thinks I don't know how to do this myself?
Right.
You know, it's like, and then we get into this whole thing.
Or you get these long emails.
Yeah, long, super stupid long emails that you don't even read the whole thing because it's too long. So what you want to do is you want to use both. This stuff here. The fact that this is actually why I majored in English, because when I was a young officer and I hadn't been to college yet, luckily, so I was able to figure out what I wanted to major in, but I could already see, and there was no war going on. This is like 1998, 1999. I could already see that the written messages that we'd get, they were so important to be able to understand. And then you had to be able to write a concept of operation that made sense. Mm-hmm. And so I knew, I was like, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get really good at this. And I realized that this idea of communicating with other humans was the actual basis of all leadership, up and down the chain of command. And what really helped me a lot was when I had to study Shakespeare in college. Mm-hmm. The thing is, Shakespeare is very humbling because you don't know what the freaking words mean because they're barely English, right? It's barely English. And anyone that says they can pick up Shakespeare and understand it is either lying to you or they came from a time machine in Middle England, because it doesn't happen. So what I realized, because at first you're reading Shakespeare and you're like, oh, I must be stupid. I'm stupid because it's like, no, actually, you wouldn't know that word. That word hasn't been used since 1648. Mm-hmm. So why would you know this word? Why would you know the meaning of that word? You wouldn't know it. So you have to look it up. And you know what it is? It's just humbling. So when I would get some ROE from some rules of engagement down from the chain of command, and I'd look at it and go, well, I'm not really sure what this means. I didn't just go, oh, well, screw it. I'll just make my best guess. No, I would get out a dictionary and look up the damn words that I didn't understand and then simplify them, because if I don't understand what a word means, there's no way in hell.
And you're an English major.
Yeah, and I'm an English major, and there's no way in hell that some of our frontline guys are going to know it. So you got to translate it for them. So this stuff about communications,
huge. It's back to simple.
It's just, it's got to be simple, clear, concise is what we say at Echelon Front. Simple, clear, concise. That's the way it's got to be. Continuing on, this is so good. The more pressing the situation, the shorter the order. Where circumstances permit, oral orders are given in accordance with the terrain, not the map. Oh, that's good. So whenever I can, I'm actually taking you out there. I'm actually looking, okay, Andrew, you see that hill over there? I want you to get, put some machine guns up there because we're going to assault through. You go, okay, got it. Not looking at a map. We're looking at the terrain itself. Yeah. How often can you actually get eyes on? In the front lines and with the lower commanders, this is particularly so. With important orders, it is often advisable to use 2 or more means of transmission, which is what I just said. And I tell that to companies all the time. Hey, you want to get your vision out to the company? Email it to them. Do a video. Do a conference call. Do a poster that they can do it all. Get that message out there. I hate to say over communicate because that implies it's too much, but over communicate. When I think of over communicate, it's like I'm going to send you. Hey, Andrew, I'm going to send you 48 emails every day.
Yeah. Now I don't even know which one I should be reading here. I had a good conversation with Sarah Armstrong at Muster about this, and about how in this day and age, if anything, people tend to overuse email, and we have these just swamped inboxes. And in this modern day and age, having a good plan in place for some comms discipline and it's exactly what you said earlier. And I've been using this in business for years. It's a conversation because you can get to the bottom line quicker because so much of the communication is nonverbal. It's like tonality. And if you can do it over a video of VTC or a Zoom or Skype or whatever, great. So you get to the solution quicker because we're going back and forth on each other. We get to that final conclusion, and then you follow up with an email because then it's black and white, and then you have like the confirmation of this is what we talked about. Documented. Yep. Exactly.
It is easy to underestimate the time required to get an order through. That's a good one. It's going to take a little bit longer than you thought. Oh, here we go. This is what you were just talking about. Too many orders, especially in battle, during which the communication means may miscarry, produces the danger of causing injury to independence of action of the lower commanders. So if you're trying to tell everyone exactly what to do, guess what? Eventually that order's not going to get through, and you know what they're doing? They're waiting to hear it because you haven't decentralized command enough. Yeah. You've trained them like a dog only to do what you tell them to do. An order shall contain all that is necessary for the lower commander to know in order for him to execute independently his task. It should contain no more. Correspondingly, the order must be brief and clear, decisive in tone and complete, adopted to the understanding of the receiver. Oh, that's what I just talked about. Adopted to the understanding. So you got to translate those big words in the ROE down to the frontline troops. And according to conditions, his peculiarity. The commander must never fail to place himself in the position of the receiver. I talk about perspective all the time. You got to understand the perspective of the person that you're talking to. They don't have all the context that you have. You got to recognize that. The language of orders must be simple and understandable. Clarity, which eliminates doubts, is more important than correct technique. Clarity must not be sacrificed for brevity. So sometimes you got to go a little bit more detailed. Negative expressions and changes lead to half measures and are objectionable. Exaggerations are equally bad. Orders may bind only insofar as they correspond to the situation and its conditions. So that's a good one. Orders may bind only insofar as they correspond to the situation and its conditions. So as soon as there's something outside that, you can't say no. Don't go across the line of the limit of advance ever. Because guess what? You might get into contact, and the only way to get out of it is to cross that limit of advance. So you better leave some flexibility in there. Still, it is often necessary to issue orders in uncertain situations. If changes in the situation are to be expected before the order is put into execution, the order should not go into details. So if you don't know really 100% what's going to happen, he says still it is often necessary to issue orders in uncertain situations. You're still going to give orders, but if change in the situation is to be expected before the order is put into execution, the order should not go into details. In great strategical operations, especially when orders must be issued for several days in advance, this abstention from details is to be specifically observed. The general intention is expressed. The end to be achieved is especially stressed. In the execution of impending action, the main instructions are given. The immediate conduct of the engagement is left to subordinate commanders. In such a way, the order is fully executed. Decentralized command, 100%.
Mission, end state.
Yes. This is what we're trying to get done. Here's where we're trying to end up. Go make it happen. Insofar as conditions permit, it is often best for the commander to clarify his intentions to his subordinates by word of mouth and discussion. Yet he must not make himself dependent on his subordinates. The decision and orders are therefore solely his. This is, hey, you talk to your platoon chief as a platoon commander, and your platoon chief is saying, we should come in from the west and attack from the west, and you go, okay, sounds good. And then you hit strong forces and you fail your mission. You don't go, well, chief told me we're coming in from the west. You said that's right. No, shut up. It was your call. He made his recommendation. Continuing, it is recommended that the written order which directs the activities of different elements to a common goal be paragraphed and the paragraphs numbered. I kind of left that in there because this is the kind of detail this manual goes into, like number your paragraphs.
Yeah.
That which is important should be placed first. Check. This is good. The following sequence is recommended for operations orders. Number 1, information. So in the U.S. military and in NATO, as a matter of fact, we use something called the 5-paragraph order, SMEAC, situation, mission, execution, admin and logistics, and command and signal. That's what we use in the U.S. military. That's sort of our abbreviated troop leading procedures. Boom. You use situation, mission, execution, admin and logistics, and command and signal. So they're talking about operational orders. The first thing, information of the enemy and neighboring units insofar as this is importance of the receiver. So what is that? That's the situation. Enemy situation and friendly situation.